My name is May. I am 28 years old. I still remember the day everything changed at Smith Co. We were a team of 8, working together seamlessly, like a well-oiled machine. Jackson was crunching numbers, Linda was brainstorming ideas with Michelle, and Tony was fixing some technical issue in the background. Pete, Mike, Levi, and Joyce were all focused on their tasks, while I, the project manager, ensured everything ran smoothly. Our team lunches and birthday celebrations were always a blast. We'd joke around, tease each other, and have a good time. It was a great place to work. But beneath the surface, a different story was unfolding. Our boss had started showing blatant favoritism towards certain team members. Linda and Pete would get the most challenging projects, while Jackson and Tony were stuck with mundane tasks. Meetings became tense, with whispers and side glances. Morale began to dip. The team's camaraderie started to fray. Some members felt overworked, while others felt underutilized. I tried to brush it off, thinking it would pass, but the favoritism continued. One day, Jackson approached me, frustration etched on his face. "Why does Linda always get the good projects?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. The tension simmered, waiting to boil over. The team's productivity began to suffer. Some members started looking for new jobs, while others became disengaged. The favoritism was suffocating us. It was only a matter of time before something snapped. And then, one fateful day, it did. But that's a story for later. For now, the seeds of discord were sown, and the team's unity was about to be tested like never before. The question was, how would we cope with the favoritism, and would it destroy us? As project manager, I knew I had to address the issue. But how could I confront our boss without jeopardizing my own job? The team was watching, waiting for me to take action. I knew I had to do something, but the fear of repercussions held me back. For now, the status quo remained, but the storm was brewing. Our boss's actions were creating a rift in the team. Some members felt undervalued, while others felt overvalued. The line between fairness and favoritism blurred. It was a delicate situation, and one misstep could lead to disaster. I knew I had to tread carefully, but the clock was ticking. The team's fate hung in the balance, and I was the only one who could tip the scales. The days turned into weeks, and the weeks turned into months. The favoritism continued, and the team's frustration grew. It was a powder keg waiting to be ignited, and when it finally exploded, the consequences would be far-reaching. But for now, the tension simmered, waiting for the perfect moment to unleash its fury. The question was, what would be the catalyst for the explosion, and how would we survive the aftermath? As the days went by, the team's dynamics continued to deteriorate. The favoritism had become a cancer, eating away at our unity and morale. I knew something had to be done, but the fear of the unknown held me back. The team's future was uncertain, and I was torn between loyalty and fairness. The clock was ticking, and the team's fate was hanging precariously in the balance. Would we find a way to overcome the favoritism, or would it tear us apart? Only time would tell. The favoritism continued to spread like wildfire, consuming our team's unity and morale. Some members started to doubt their abilities, while others felt resentful towards our boss's pets. I couldn't help but wonder how this would all play out. Would our team be able to overcome this obstacle, or would it tear us apart? As project manager, I knew I had to address the issue, but I was torn. Should I confront our boss directly, or try to find a way to work around her favoritism? The team's fate hung in the balance, and I was unsure of the best course of action. Jackson approached me one day, his frustration evident. "What's going on with Linda and Pete? Why are they getting all the attention?" I tried to reassure him that I'd look into it, but the truth was, I didn't know what to do. Meanwhile, Tony and Joyce were growing increasingly disengaged. They felt undervalued and overlooked, and it was starting to show in their work. I knew I had to act fast before the situation escalated further. But what if our boss didn't care? What if she continued to play favorites no matter the consequences? The thought sent a shiver down my spine. Our team's future was uncertain, and I was running out of options. As the days turned into weeks, the tension continued to build. The team was walking on eggshells, unsure of what would happen next. Would we find a way to overcome the favoritism, or would it destroy us from the inside out? One thing was certain: something had to give. The question was, what would it be? Would our team emerge stronger and more united than ever, or would the favoritism tear us apart, leaving nothing but ruins in its wake? The uncertainty was suffocating, and I knew I had to act soon. But how? Our boss had a way of making certain team members feel like royalty. Linda and Pete were her favorites, and it was clear to everyone in the office. She'd give them the most challenging projects, the ones that would get noticed by the higher-ups. She'd praise their work in front of everyone and offer them opportunities for growth and development. Meanwhile, the rest of us were stuck with the mundane tasks. Jackson was handling the bulk of the data entry, Tony was fixing the same technical issues over and over, and Joyce was researching topics that nobody seemed interested in. We'd try to bring our ideas to the table, but our boss would dismiss them without giving us a chance to explain. It wasn't just about the work either. Our boss would take Linda and Pete out for lunch, and they'd come back with stories about the amazing conversations they'd had. She'd ask for their opinions on important matters, while ignoring the rest of us. It was like we were invisible. The favoritism was blatant, and it was affecting the team's morale. People were starting to feel undervalued and unappreciated. I tried to talk to our boss about it, but she just said I was being too sensitive. She didn't seem to understand that her actions were creating a toxic work environment. As time went on, the favoritism only got worse. Linda and Pete were getting more and more attention, while the rest of us were getting less and less. It was like we were in two different offices. I started to wonder if anyone else noticed it, or if it was just me. But as I looked around, I saw the frustration and disappointment in my colleagues' eyes, and I knew I wasn't alone. I stood in the office, watching as our boss lavished praise on Linda and Pete for their latest project. I felt a knot in my stomach, a growing sense of frustration. Why was she always singling them out? Why did she always ignore the rest of us? I tried to shake off the feeling, focusing on my work, but it was hard to concentrate when it seemed like no matter what I did, I was invisible. I started to wonder if I was good enough, if I was doing something wrong. One day, I approached Jackson, trying to gauge his reaction to the situation. "Hey, have you noticed anything weird going on with the boss?" I asked him. He raised an eyebrow. "You mean the favoritism?" "Yeah, it's pretty obvious." I nodded, feeling a sense of validation. "I know, right? It's like she's not even seeing the rest of us." Jackson leaned in, his voice lowering. "It's not just that. It's like she's actively working against us. I've been trying to get her to look at my ideas, but she just dismisses them without even considering them." I felt a surge of anger. That wasn't fair. We all deserved a chance to shine. I started to think about what I could do to address the situation, but I wasn't sure where to start. As I walked back to my desk, I caught our boss's eye. She was smiling at Linda, who was laughing at something she had said. I felt a pang of disappointment. Why couldn't she treat everyone with the same kindness and respect? I sat down at my desk, trying to focus on my work, but my mind kept wandering back to the situation. What could I do to make things more fair? And what would happen if I couldn't? The team's morale began to sag. People stopped participating in meetings, and conversations became stilted. Jackson started looking for a new job, and Joyce wasn't far behind. Tony's usual good humor disappeared, replaced by frustration and anger. Productivity plummeted. Projects were delayed, and mistakes crept in. Our boss seemed oblivious to the impact her favoritism was having. She continued to lavish attention on Linda and Pete, while the rest of us struggled to stay afloat. Meetings became tense, People would argue over minor issues, and discussions would devolve into shouting matches. Our boss would step in, trying to mediate, but her bias was clear. She'd side with Linda and Pete, and the rest of us would feel like our voices weren't being heard. The team's camaraderie disintegrated. We stopped having lunch together, and our once friendly banter disappeared. People stopped sharing ideas, and collaboration ground to a halt. Our boss's favoritism had created a toxic work environment, and it was tearing us apart. One day, Mike approached me, his voice low. "I don't know how much more of this I can take. The favoritism is killing me." I nodded in agreement, feeling a sense of solidarity with my colleague. We were all struggling, and it was getting harder to keep going. As the days turned into weeks, the team's performance continued to deteriorate. Our boss's favoritism had created a poison pill, and it was spreading fast. We were losing good people, and our work was suffering. Something had to change, but it wasn't clear what or when. The team's future hung in the balance, and it was uncertain if we could recover. I decided to talk to my colleagues, see if they had any ideas about what was going on. I met with Jackson and Tony in the break room, and we discussed the situation. "It's just not fair," Jackson said. "We're all working hard, but Linda and Pete get all the attention." "I know," I said. "I've tried to talk to the boss about it, but she just says we're being too sensitive." Tony nodded. "I've tried to reason with her too, but she doesn't listen. It's like she's made up her mind about Linda and Pete." We brainstormed ideas, trying to come up with a solution. Maybe we could document all our work and show the boss that we're contributing too. Maybe we could talk to HR and see if they could help. I decided to try to reason with the boss again. I scheduled a meeting with her and prepared my arguments. When I got to her office, I laid out my concerns. "Boss, I wanted to talk to you about the way you're treating us," I said. "It feels like you're favoring Linda and Pete, and it's affecting our morale." The boss leaned back in her chair, a look of surprise on her face. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "I'm just recognizing talent when I see it." I pressed on, trying to make my case. "But boss, we're all talented in our own ways, and we're feeling undervalued and overlooked." The boss sighed, her expression unchanging. "I'll take your concerns into consideration," she said, "but I think you're just being too sensitive." I left the meeting feeling frustrated. It seemed like the boss wasn't going to change her ways anytime soon. I wondered what else I could do to address the situation. I tried to rally my colleagues to join me in speaking up about the favoritism, but every time I brought it up, they'd hesitate. "I'm not sure that's a good idea," Jackson would say. "The boss doesn't take criticism well." Tony nodded in agreement. "I've seen her shut down people who disagree with her. It's not worth the risk." I understood their concerns. The boss was known for being defensive and dismissive, but I couldn't let that stop me. I scheduled another meeting with her, determined to make my case. As I sat down in her office, I could feel the tension in the air. The boss's body language was closed off, her arms crossed over her chest. "What is it that you want to talk about?" she asked curtly. I took a deep breath and launched into my concerns about the favoritism, but the boss didn't let me finish. "I don't appreciate your tone," she said, her voice rising. "You're just jealous of Linda and Pete's success." I tried to explain myself, but she cut me off. "I don't want to hear it," she said. "You're just going to have to accept that I'm the boss, and I make the decisions." I left the meeting feeling frustrated and defeated. It seemed like the boss was never going to listen to us, and my colleagues were too afraid to speak up. As I walked back to my desk, I saw Linda and Pete chatting with the boss. They were laughing and smiling, and the boss was beaming with pride. It was like a different world from the one I was living in. I sat down at my desk, feeling like I was hitting a brick wall. How could I get through to the boss? And how could I convince my colleagues to stand up for themselves? It seemed like an impossible task. I realized that I couldn't keep waiting for the boss to change. It was time for me to take action. I started thinking about what I could do to address the favoritism and create a more fair work environment. I decided to talk to HR, see if they could offer any guidance or support. As I sat down with the HR representative, I laid out my concerns about the boss's behavior. I've tried to talk to her about it, but she just gets defensive, I said. I'm not sure what else to do. The HR rep nodded thoughtfully. It's not uncommon for managers to have favorites, but it's not okay if it's affecting the team's morale. Let's see what we can do to help. With newfound determination, I started documenting everything. I kept track of all the projects, meetings, and interactions with the boss. I made a list of all the times Linda and Pete were given preferential treatment. I also started talking to my colleagues more openly, trying to rally them to my cause. We need to stand up for ourselves, I said to Jackson. We can't just sit back and let the boss treat us unfairly. Jackson nodded in agreement. I'm with you, he said. What can we do? Together, we started brainstorming ideas. We decided to present our concerns to the boss in a united front. We would show her the evidence we had gathered and demand a more fair and transparent work environment. As we prepared for the meeting, I felt a sense of purpose. I was no longer just complaining about the situation. I was taking action to change it. I was determined to make a difference, no matter what it took. The day of the meeting arrived, and I felt a sense of anticipation. What would the boss say? Would she listen to our concerns or dismiss them? I stood outside her office, took a deep breath, and walked in. It was time to take a stand. I walked into the boss's office, determined to address the favoritism. Jackson and Tony stood beside me, their faces set with determination. We need to talk about the way you're managing the team, I said, my voice firm. The boss looked up from her computer, a hint of surprise on her face. What is it that you want to talk about? She asked, her tone neutral. We want to talk about the favoritism, Jackson said, his voice steady. It's affecting the team's morale and productivity. The boss leaned back in her chair, a defensive look crossing her face. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. I'm just recognizing talent when I see it. I pulled out a folder filled with documentation. We've tracked the projects and assignments, I said. It's clear that Linda and Pete are getting preferential treatment. The boss's expression turned cold. I don't appreciate your tone, she said. You're just jealous of their success. Tony spoke up, his voice calm. We're not jealous, he said. We're concerned about the impact on the team. We want to work in a fair and transparent environment. The boss sighed, her expression unchanging. I'll take your concerns into consideration, she said. But I think you're overreacting. I felt a surge of frustration. It seemed like the boss wasn't taking our concerns seriously. But I wasn't going to give up. I stood up, followed by Jackson and Tony. We'll be watching to see if things change, I said. If not, we'll take it up with HR. The boss's expression didn't change, but I could sense a flicker of uncertainty behind her eyes. She knew we were serious, and I knew that this was just the beginning. The boss called a team meeting the next day, her expression stern. I've been made aware of some concerns about favoritism, she said. I want to assure you that I'm committed to fairness and transparency. But her words were hollow. She went on to announce that Linda and Pete would be leading the next big project, with Jackson and Tony as their assistants. The team's murmurs of discontent were immediate. This is exactly what we're talking about, Jackson said, his voice low but angry. You're not listening to us. The boss's face reddened. I'm still the manager here, she said, and I'll make the decisions. I spoke up, my voice firm. We understand that you're the manager, I said, but we deserve to be treated fairly. And right now, that's not happening. The meeting erupted into chaos, with everyone talking at once. The boss tried to regain control, but it was too late. The team's frustration and anger boiled over, and it was clear that things would never be the same again. As the meeting broke up, I noticed that some team members were talking to each other in huddles. Others were staring at their phones, their faces lit up with concern. The boss stood alone, her expression uncertain. The tension in the office was palpable no more. I mean, it was thick. People were either furious or frightened. Some were whispering about what they would do next. Others were quietly seething. The question was, what would happen next? Would the team continue to fragment? Or would we find a way to come together and move forward? Only time would tell. The days that followed were filled with uncertainty. Some team members began to look for new jobs, while others tried to find ways to cope with the situation. The boss's behavior became more erratic, and the team's morale continued to plummet. It was clear that something had to give. But what would it be? And how would it affect the team and the boss? The future was uncertain, and it was up to us to shape it. The tension in the office finally came to a head. The boss called another team meeting, this time with a somber expression. "I want to apologize for my behavior," she said. "I realize now that I was playing favorites, and it was unfair to the rest of you." The team looked at each other in surprise. Some nodded in acceptance, while others still seemed skeptical. "I know I haven't been the best manager," the boss continued, "but I'm committed to changing. I want to work with all of you to create a more fair and transparent work environment." The team began to discuss how to move forward, and for the first time in weeks, there was a sense of hope. Maybe things could actually change. As the meeting adjourned, I approached the boss. "Thank you for apologizing," I said. "It takes a lot of courage to admit when you're wrong." The boss nodded, looking relieved. "I'm glad I did it," she said. "I realize now that I was holding everyone back. I'm committed to doing better." Over the next few weeks, the team dynamics began to shift. The boss made a genuine effort to be more fair and inclusive. Linda and Pete still excelled, but now others were given opportunities too. The team's morale began to lift. People started to collaborate more, and the office was filled with the sound of laughter and conversation. It was like a weight had been lifted off everyone's shoulders. As I looked around the office, I felt a sense of pride. We had stood up for ourselves, and it had paid off. The team was stronger and more united than ever before. The boss approached me, a smile on her face. "You guys were right," she said. "I needed to listen more and be more fair. Thank you for holding me accountable." I smiled back, feeling a sense of closure. "We're all in this together," I said. "We're glad we could work through this as a team." The team's transformation was nothing short of remarkable. As we sat in the office discussing our newfound dynamics, I looked around at my colleagues. We had been through a tough time, but we had come out stronger. The boss had learned a valuable lesson about fairness and transparency. She had taken steps to rectify her behavior, and it had paid off. The team was more united than ever before. As I stood up to leave, I caught the eye of Jackson. He nodded in agreement, and I knew exactly what he was thinking. We had been through a lot, but we had made it through together. The question was, what would happen next? Would we continue to grow and thrive as a team? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain. We had learned the power of standing up for ourselves. We had learned that our voices mattered, and that together we could overcome even the toughest challenges. As I walked out of the office, I turned to the team and said, "Remember, your voice is powerful. Don't be afraid to use it. Stand up for what you believe in, and never give up on your dreams." The team nodded in agreement, and I knew that our message would resonate with others. We had been through a difficult time, but we had come out stronger, and we would continue to thrive as long as we stood together. To viewers everywhere, your voice is powerful. Use it. Stand up for what you believe in. Never give up on your dreams. Share this video to those people you know that needs it. Comment if you will stand for what you believe. Subscribe for more videos like this.